Are atheists open-minded, or do we just refuse to accept crazy crap into our heads? That's the question we're going to try to answer today. And we're going to do it from a Jewish perspective because they're really no different from any of the rest, and it's important to see just how ignorant they are as well. So, strap in, boys and girls, because this one is gonna get bumpy. So, this one is a little bit unique. I don't know that I've ever responded to a Jewish video before, but hey, I'm an equal opportunity critic. I'll go after anybody. Anyway, this channel is called Ask My Jewish Question, and the question in question, whatever, is how can they get atheists to be more open-minded? And we'll get to the answer in a minute, because the problem, as with all theists everywhere, it isn't us, it's them. It's always them. But what the hell else is new, right? So anyway, let's go take a look.
Hi, I'm Siggy, and I'm from Los Angeles. And my Jewish question is, if I have a student who already is a self-proclaimed atheist, how do I make them explore other options and feeling open-minded without making them feel like I'm forcing a belief system about God onto them?
Well, that's an easy one. Evidence. Present evidence for your claims. Not arguments, not hand-waving nonsense. Actual, demonstrable, objectively verifiable evidence for the things that you believe are actually true in factual reality. Got any of that? Yeah, I didn't think so. Because if you notice, that's where the problem begins and ultimately ends. We're not closed-minded. We're just not stupid. We're demanding that you prove your claims are true, and the religious, any religious that you want to mention, they just can't do that, can they? And then they pretend that there's something wrong with us. Nope, you got that completely backwards. But anyway, let's go see what the rabbi has to say.
Okay, Siggy, this is a very interesting question. And it's something that we face often, whether you're dealing with maybe a friend or a professor or someone that you know, and they claim to be an atheist.
And how many times have we heard that? It's never, they are an atheist. It's that we claim it. And that's kind of insulting, isn't it? I mean, if we said, well, you claim to be a Jew, would you get offended? Most likely, and rightfully so. So stop being a douchebag. You really don't have to. We're not claiming to be an atheist. We are atheists. We don't believe in your imaginary friends. And that, by definition, makes us atheists. Ultimately, this is just a defense mechanism because the very idea that there are people out there who actively do not believe in your gods, that hurts their precious widow fee-fees. Well, too fucking bad. Welcome to reality. Anyway, get back on task.
So I'd like to share with you an interesting parallel. I remember seeing a picture from the 1850s of a medical school. The surgeon was there operating on the patient, and the entire medical school, a few hundred students, were there surrounding him during the operation. The unusual part was not just that they were crowded around him, but none of them were wearing masks or gowns.
And that only shows that as time goes on, we tend to learn more. You know, more than some ancient Middle Eastern religion that likes to think that they're magically special because feelings. Yeah, we've grown up a lot since then, which is something that I'm sure he won't take away from this little example, because he doesn't see things in that light. They're not very good at examining reality because that's not what their emotional state dictates. But I'm going to let him go on and see if we can get to anything remotely resembling a rational conclusion. I'm not going to be holding my breath because, religion and all, but I guess it's possible? I hope? Maybe? Let's see.
Wearing street clothes, breathing directly into the open wounds of the patient. Now, the reason for that was because until Louis Pasteur came along in the 1860s or so, germ theory wasn't known.
And he's still playing into our hands, because it wasn't generally known back in the ancient past that there was no good reason to believe in gods, thus just about everyone did. Now, today, we know better. At least a lot of us know better, because there's still a lot of really dumb people out there. I mean, here's one who has dedicated his entire life to magical woo thinking and blind belief. But generally speaking, rational people know better than to believe in stupid shit for purely emotional reasons. At least I hope they do. Some of them do. I don't know. That's kind of a depressing thought. Anyway, that's why I always find shows like this so absolutely ludicrous, where they take what might be legitimate questions and they just head off to ask the worst possible sources for answers, simply because they want an emotionally comforting response. Well, maybe reality isn't emotionally comforting. Did you ever think about that? No, of course they didn't. Why would they think about that? It's why these people are ultimately children.
And most of the casualties during the Civil War actually were due to death of infection and not to mortal wounds on the battlefield. Now imagine for a minute the following. Imagine that you got to go up to that surgeon and you said to him, "Sir, with all due respect, I just want to let you know, when you're breathing on the patient, you're infecting him, you might kill him." The surgeon looks at us, "What are you talking about?" "Sir, don't you realize they're microorganisms? When you breathe, there are germs, there are microbes, viruses. You're going to be killing your patient."
Like I said, we learned a lot more than they knew during the Civil War. We learn more all the time. We're going to know more tomorrow than we know today. That's kind of how knowledge works. The problem comes in when people who are set in their ways refuse to listen to reality. People like Jews and Christians and Muslims and Buddhists and Scientologists and all the rest. And I'm not picking on him per se, because when your entire belief system is based on ancient primitive thinking that peaked prior to the Bronze Age, you got some problems, pal. But these people, they just don't care, do they? And what this guy doesn't recognize is that in his own example, he's the ignorant surgeon, not the person saying, "Hey, haven't you heard that a lot of the things that you believe are just utter nonsense?" Because these people are just blinded to reality. And I just thought it was important to point that out.
And the surgeon says, "What are you talking about? What are these germ things?" Well, so, they're very, very small. We don't see them. But every time you breathe, you're literally emitting millions of them. And they get into the body and they start multiplying. And that's how many, many patients die. Now, if that surgeon were to look at you and say, "Fool, you're out of your mind. That can't exist. I've been a surgeon my entire life. Not once have I seen any of these microorganisms. Not once have I seen these germs. What you're saying is absurd and cannot be," you'd understand that you're dealing with a man who's ignorant, but more significantly closed-minded.
Like you, because that's really what we've come to recognize over time. The religious, and again, this refers to all religions, not just this one, they are all ignorant and closed-minded. Their faith is based on their feelings, not on any demonstrable facts. It's not based on the best thinking that we can come to. It's based on some of the worst. It really doesn't matter what makes you happy. It matters if what you believe, what you allow into your head, what you preach and teach and think is actually so, is actually defensible using the latest and most up-to-date information that we can manage. And when you people stopped even thinking about things thousands of years ago, you got some issues, I'm sorry to say. And then, of course, you call us close-minded. Yeah, That's insanely common, and they can't seem to see that what they're doing is everything that they are accusing others of doing. Because, as I keep saying, they just aren't that smart. Or at least, they just aren't that rational. And that's a problem whether they want to admit it or not.
Now, it's okay if back then you didn't know this because medical science wasn't aware of it. But being closed-minded to something is very, very difficult to allow you to be open to new knowledge and things that man isn't aware of.
I trust I don't have to keep hammering this point home. When your entire religious ideology is based on the beliefs of ancient, ignorant goat herders, you got some problems. And that goes whether you're a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or anything else. All of these religions stunted over 1,000 years ago. It's time to flush the primitive mindset and join modern reality. You're just making complete fools of yourself, as though that's any surprise. And why is it only we can see that, and never the fools themselves?
In a very similar way, I say to a person who's an avowed atheist, an atheist means that you've studied religion, you've studied God, and after much, much thought and much, much time, you've reached the conclusion that God cannot exist.
Oh, look, another idiot who thinks they get to tell us what we believe and how we operate. Joy. We don't have to follow your fucking rules, Rabbi. Do us a favor and fuck the hell right off. That is not what atheism is. Granted, there are a lot of atheists who have studied religion in detail, and we have come to the conclusion that a lot of gods, based on the definitions provided by the religious, are at the very least irrational, and for some, they're simply intellectually indefensible. But you don't get to tell us what we believe or don't believe, because that's just a straw man designed to appeal to your own ignorant religious audience. Even amongst the Jews, they're all doing the same stupid shit for the same stupid reasons. Because these people are fucking stupid. Nuff said.
The question I would ask any of our atheists is, how much time did you actually spend studying the text?
Quite a bit. And that's why most surveys find that atheists, in general, know more about religion than most religious people do. Now, granted, Jews tend to be pretty high on that scale too, so I'm not criticizing you for that. The problem is, we do more than just studying the text, because the text really isn't that important when it comes right down to it. We study reality, and then we put the claims in your text to the test and see how your beliefs comport with objective reality. And I'm sorry to say, it usually doesn't work out very well for you. You're concerned with your traditions. We're concerned with the facts. Given those two propositions, which one gets you to a more demonstrably accurate representation of reality? Well, it's not yours, Rabbi. Not at all. It's never, ever yours.
How much time did you spend studying Judaism? How much time have you spent learning the religion?
Enough to know that it's complete and utter nonsense. I don't have an emotional attachment to the belief system like you do. I'm not playing any of these "we're the chosen people" games that you seem to think is important, because those games are just stupid. Your feelings don't mean a damn thing. They never did, and they never will. It's why you're still that surgeon, stunted in your ignorance and terminally attached to your fifis. While the rest of us are trying to explain how modern reality works, and you're just sticking your fingers in the air screaming, "La la 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 la, I can't hear you." Because you're just a child. You really are. You can't move on from your religious delusions because you just don't care. You've been raised to believe that this crap is true, and because your entire life, your entire self-image is based on it, you can't see beyond your pathetic brainwashing. And you don't seem to have a problem with that. That's utterly pathetic, Rabbi. Maybe you ought to do something about it.
Now, if you spend hours and hours and really got a very good understanding of what the religion is, got a good understanding of Judaism's perception of God, and then reach the conclusion, we could debate whether you're correct or not.
Based on what exactly? Because you notice the only thing he cares about is his religion. Not science, not philosophy, not a rational understanding of evidence. He cares only about his religion. It's like trying to have a conversation with a flat earther. They might say, well, once you've studied our literature, once you understand our beliefs, then we can have a debate. Yeah, except they can't consider anything beyond their own blind faith, because they presume right up front that they have to be right and everyone else has to be wrong, and there's no way anyone is ever going to change their mind. And there's a word for that: fanaticism, and it's not a good thing. Maybe you ought to knock that off too.
But if you've closed your mind off without studying it, without knowing it, then with all due respect, you're not an atheist, you're ignorant. And being closed-minded will never allow you to understand anything.
Then you've just demonstrated yourself to be ignorant, Rabbi, because the only thing you know is your silly book and your stupid beliefs. You don't know a damn thing beyond that. You've dedicated your entire life to blind faith, and you can't prove that anything you believe is actually demonstrably true. And that's why the faithful Jews spend all of their time with their noses in the Torah, just like Christians spend all of their time with their noses in the Bible. And the Muslims, they do the same thing with the Quran. That's all for them. That's all they know and all they care about. They don't know anything beyond it, and they don't care to know anything beyond it, because they just believe that their silly books are true, and if they're not, well, they just don't care about that either. Faith is not a virtue, yet it's all these people have. And I don't care if you think you know everything there is to know about a flat earth. You're unable to set your emotions aside and just examine the facts to see if they verify that these beliefs and these books and these teachings are objectively true. Because these people couldn't care less. And that's utterly pathetic.
For a person to understand the answers to much of life's questions, the first ingredient is an open mind. If a person has an open mind, let me learn, let me understand, let me hear, and then there are many, many proofs, many, many positions that will explain it, and a person can reach a very deep understanding.
And let me ask you this, Rabbi. Have you actually done that? Have you gone beyond the Torah? Have you set aside your emotional attachment and just looked to see if the things that you believe are objectively and demonstrably true? Because I guarantee that you haven't. Because if you had, you wouldn't still be believing in any of this nonsense. And that goes for all religions, because the religious simply can't go and look at the facts irrespective of their blind faith. They have a conclusion, an emotionally comforting conclusion, that they have to reach, whether it's realistic, evidence-based, or rational or not, because they just don't care about any of those things. They never have, and they never will. And no matter how much it really gives you the feels deep down in the cockles of your heart, that's just dumb.
But if a person's attitude is, I know the facts, my mind is made up already, don't confuse me with the details and the facts because I know the truth. If that's a person's position, there's nothing you can do. All you can do is ask them if they've really spent enough time studying it and if they truly understand what it is that they're rejecting.
You know, the second that you understand what's wrong with the religious mindset, it becomes painfully clear that the only people that they're actually talking about is themselves. If you don't come to the conclusion that I come to, well, you're automatically wrong. No, that's just not how it works. Let's have a discussion based on the evidence at hand and come to a rational conclusion about what's really going on. we have to assume that everything that I believe is right first. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way either. And if you listen to Christian apologists, they're doing the same damn thing. And the same with the Muslims and the Buddhists and the Hindus and everybody else. The Bible is true because they desperately want the Bible to be true. Therefore, the Bible is true. Really? Prove it. They don't have to because, the Bible is true. Here, we just saw from a different religious perspective that the Torah is true because the Torah is true, and therefore the Torah is true. Yeah, that fails too, sorry. We need to drop all of the preconceptions and go strictly by the evidence. Can we show that the things in the Torah are objective, demonstrably, and independently verifiably true? No, we can't. Therefore, these things just need to get booted out, but the religious can't do that because all of the things that they believe, they have a strict emotional attachment to, and therefore, we can't give it up. We just can't. And that's dumb. Therefore, they call us unreasonable because we're not open-minded, and they insist there's something wrong with us because we won't play along with their hyper-emotional side. Nor should we. But the thing is, we're doing the exact same thing with everyone. We're not singling out the Jews or the Christians or the Hindus. We have a single standard, and none of them can get anywhere close to meeting it. And that's not our problem, it's theirs. They are just not concerned because they just don't care if their beliefs are realistic, and they certainly don't care if they're true. So long as they get that dopamine shot in the brain, that's all they care about. Nothing else matters. Except it does. It always does. And that's really the only thing that matters, coming to an understanding of what's actually going on in the real world. Your feelings are irrelevant. Your blind faith means nothing. It's time you people grew the hell up. The shit in your book that you really, really like, unless it can be independently and objectively validated, it's complete bunk. Get rid of it. Move on. But they can't because fifis. And that's what makes this an ongoing exercise in futility. We care about the truth. They don't. They never have, and they never will. And that's why they refuse to break it down. And that's why we think they're so pathetic. It's time for them to grow up. I just don't think that they have that capacity. If there's anything more sad than that, I really don't know what it is. And that's a really, really depressing thought.